In today's video, we delve into the twisted mind of a crazy fan of true crime documentaries and videos like the one you're watching right now. This girl wanted nothing more than to commit the perfect crime and get away with it. This is the story of a psychopath from South Korea. I've already covered her story on my Telegram, but that was a short version. Here, I wanted to really dig into this case, since you're on my channel, where I occasionally talk about real crimes and strange phenomena. If you enjoy this kind of content, make sure to subscribe, and let's dive into today's story. Busan is the second largest city in South Korea, located along the country's southeastern coast. One of the people who called Busan her home was 23-year-old Jung Yoo-jung. She lived a double life. By day, she was an unremarkable, quiet, and well-mannered young woman. But at night, she would watch true crime documentaries, read articles on the subject, or become engrossed in similar chilling news stories. You might say, so what? We all do that, but the thing is, her fascination turned into an obsession. She became so obsessed with this whole subject that at some point, she seriously started dreaming about trying to do something herself. And this time, she wanted videos and books to be made about her own deeds. And she got what she wanted, because right now you're watching a video about her. So in May of last year, Yoo-jung decided to follow her dream and began planning the perfect crime. She borrowed books from the library about how to hide bodies, and for 3 months she studied forensic technologies and how investigations work in general on the internet. Yoo-jung herself had no criminal record and didn't know anyone who was outside the law. On paper, she was an ordinary citizen, so she understood that if her victim was a complete stranger with no connection to her, it would most likely work. And where better to find such a person than in a tutor matching app? South Korean youth are under immense pressure to succeed academically. That's why, in recent years, tutor apps have become extremely popular. As a rule, they're full of accredited private teachers advertising their services. The perfect hunting ground for Yoo-jung. Over the course of several days, she contacted more than 50 tutors in Busan, posing as the mother of a school child who needed extra English lessons. After lengthy negotiations, she settled on a female tutor whom we'll call Kay, a 26-year-old woman who lived alone and received students directly at her place. According to those who knew her, Kay was a bright and warm person, and she genuinely cared about each of her students, wanting all of them to reach their full potential. She was not only a wonderful listener, but also an understanding person, so most likely she didn't suspect anything when Yoo-jung asked her, "Do you live alone?" After all, her future student was probably just shy and didn't want anyone else to listen in and judge her for wrong answers. Kay confirmed that she did indeed live alone, and in the end, agreed to meet with the student in 2 days for an introductory lesson. Kay's house was located in the Gwang district, about a 20-minute drive from where Yoo-jung lived with her grandfather, her only guardian and the only relative she knew. On May 26, 2023, at around 4:00 p.m., Yoo-jung was captured on surveillance camera walking to Kay's apartment, dressed in a school uniform she had ordered online. Given her short stature and youthful appearance, she could easily pass for a 9th grader, the very person Kay had arranged to meet. A few days earlier, she had even cut her hair shorter to look more like a young student. Yoo-jung arrived at the apartment at 5:34 p.m. At the door, she was warmly greeted by Kay, who had no idea of her guest's true intentions. If Kay had any doubts about Yoo-jung's age, she had no chance to voice them. Yoo-jung immediately entered Kay's apartment. After a brief exchange of pleasantries, she said that she really needed to use the bathroom. Kay pointed out where to go, although in reality, Yoo-jung used this opportunity to walk from room to room, double-checking that Kay really did live alone. Once she was sure it was safe, Yoo-jung took out the kitchen knife she had hidden in her uniform and lunged at Kay in the main room. She caught her off guard and delivered more than 100 knife wounds, focusing on her neck and chest. The holes in Kay's palms indicate that she tried to defend herself, but in the end, understandably, she couldn't do anything. Even after Kay stopped breathing, Yoo-jung continued to strike her brutally. Friends, have you noticed how quickly times are changing? In the past, people worked simply because they needed to eat, have a place to live, something to drive, and it didn't matter whether you liked your job or not. You got paid, and that was it. That was enough. But now everyone wants an interesting profession to solve unusual problems, to have a high salary, and not go to the office. In the online sphere, those responsible for the appearance and usability of websites will always be in demand. This is the field of design. And no, you absolutely don't need to know how to draw or be familiar with programming languages here. It's more of a creative direction. UDIV School of Design is offering free access to a design course with a personal mentor. You'll spend just 5 days to learn the basics of design, create a portfolio of 4 works, and have a real person answer every question you have. You'll master Figma from scratch, learn how to work with content, create interface animations, and understand composition. And right after that, of course, you'll be able to take on your first projects. Salaries for entry-level specialists in this field start at 80,000, and many students begin to earn money gradually even while they're still studying. Here, by the way, are examples of students' work from the school, and you can do the same. You can study at any time that's convenient for you, and all the skills and knowledge you gain will be packaged into a compelling portfolio so you can start working. And to make your skills even more relevant, UDivi School gives every student a useful guide to 30 neural networks. If you want to change your life, hurry up. Free spots for the course are limited. The link to the school and all additional information can be found in the video description. An hour after taking Kay's life, Yoo-jung left the apartment dressed in her victim's clothes, which she had taken from her wardrobe, as if assuming her identity. She went to several nearby supermarkets, where surveillance cameras recorded her buying garbage bags, cleaning supplies, and a number of sharp blades. She later used them to dismember and dispose of Kay's remains. It's unknown why she didn't just bring these items with her right away. Perhaps she was afraid that an officer might stop her and search her bag. Or maybe she simply assumed that Kay already had these things in her apartment. Or maybe she just doesn't know how to plan. Be that as it may, Yoo-jung returned to Kay's apartment and began cutting up her remains. She also didn't forget to pocket the mobile phone, ID, and wallet. After all that gruesome work, she set about removing any evidence of her presence in the apartment. Yoo-jung went back to her own place to get a suitcase. In the footage, you can see her happily skipping toward Kay's apartment, ready to continue tidying up. She gathered her victim's clothes into 3 garbage bags and threw them into the nearest dumpster. After that, she stuffed the body parts into the suitcase. The entire cleaning process took about 6 hours, during which Yoo-jung went back and forth between her home and Kay's place 3 times, collecting the remaining evidence and going in and out as if it were her own apartment. On several surveillance camera recordings, she can be seen casually walking to and from the crime scene, completely unconcerned about what she had done and what she still had to do. If you had passed her on the street at one of those moments, you would never have guessed what she was planning or what she was capable of. Around midnight on May 27th, Yoo-jung left the apartment for the last time, taking with her the suitcase containing Kay's body parts. At the curb, Yoo-jung hailed a taxi and asked the driver to take her to Yangsan, located 20 kilometers north of Busan. She herself put the obviously heavy suitcase in the trunk of the car, refusing the driver's help, and did not engage in any conversation with him on the way to their destination. Moreover, she didn't even look him in the eye. When they passed a secluded spot by the river, Yoo-jung asked the driver to stop, paid him, took the suitcase out of the taxi's trunk herself, and then, without a word, disappeared into the forest. For all the obvious reasons, I think, the taxi driver found all of this rather strange. Who would take a taxi to the river alone in the middle of the night, and with a suspiciously heavy suitcase at that? Yoo-jung didn't ask him to wait for her, but instead of leaving, the taxi driver decided to drive around the area a bit to see if she would return to the road. After 15 to 20 minutes, he noticed her coming back through the thicket, still carrying her suitcase. And from the way she was carrying it, he realized that the suitcase was much lighter than before, as if she had just gotten rid of something heavy. She stopped the car again and asked for a ride to her home, where she lived with her grandfather. The authorities are convinced that Yoo-jung didn't even realize that the taxi driver was the same guy who had given her a ride before. The taxi driver complied and tried not to think any more about how something strange was going on. But later, still following his intuition, he contacted the police. It was around 3 o'clock in the morning. At that time, he reported that the young woman might have thrown something away in a deserted forest, and gave her home address where he had and dropped her off. Soon, detectives arrived and inspected Yoo-jung's suitcase. They asked her why there were drops of red liquid in it, to which the girl replied that she was menstruating at the time and said that some of the liquid must have gotten into the suitcase. Doubting her words, the police took her to a local hospital. The medical staff ran several tests and confirmed that Yoo-jung was not at that stage of her cycle and that the blood in the suitcase was not hers. And this is where we truly get inside Yoo-jung's mind. She instantly changed her story and said that in fact she had just given birth and wanted to get rid of the baby. For some reason, she thought this would sound better and that it wouldn't be considered murder. But she didn't expect the police to perform an ultrasound, which revealed that this story was yet another lie. By that time, other police officers who had searched the area discovered human remains in the tall grass. The detectives took Yoo-jung in for questioning, but instead of asking for a lawyer, she came up with yet another story. She claimed that she went to Kay's apartment for an English lesson. But when she arrived, she found that Kay's door was unlocked. She went inside and, to her horror, discovered Kay's body on the floor. And the man responsible for all of this, an unknown individual, was still in the apartment. He locked the door and told her that if she kept quiet and helped him get rid of the body, he would let her go. After what was probably the biggest collective facepalm in history, the detectives composed themselves and politely informed Yoo-jung that her story made no sense. Getting a bit nervous, Yoo-jung changed her story once again. Then she said that it was embarrassing for an adult to look for a tutor, so I pretended to be a schoolgirl. When she saw me, she didn't suspect a thing. Shortly after I arrived, we got into a heated argument about her study program, and fearing for my safety, I killed her in self-defense. At that moment, with a heavy sigh, the investigators contacted Yoo-jung's grandfather and asked him to come to the station. When he found out what his granddaughter had done, his world collapsed around him. He had raised her since early childhood and couldn't believe that she was capable of doing something so cruel to a stranger. But when he was presented with the evidence, he could no longer deny that she was the one responsible for Kay's death. And since the investigators couldn't get an honest confession from her, they asked the grandfather to go into the room and talk to Yoo-jung one-on-one. He agreed. Inside, he broke down in tears and begged his granddaughter to just tell the truth, to do it for him. Maybe she loved her grandfather, or maybe she just realized it was all over, but at that moment, Yoo-jung finally confessed. She explained that there had been no argument, she simply had a fascination with everything related to real crimes. Movies, shows, books, news articles. And she said that she was simply curious to know what it would be like to be involved in a case firsthand. She wanted to satisfy that curiosity. And so she took the life of a person who had never done her, or anyone else, any harm in any way. She recounted all of this so unemotionally, so detached, that it not only caught the investigators off guard, but even surprised the most experienced among them. After studying the history of her search for a tutor and the surveillance footage from the day of the murder, they were even more astonished. They had encountered cases of premeditated murder before, but never anything like this. They learned that Yoo-jung was particularly fascinated by the film Helpless, a Korean psychological thriller about a woman who kills and then assumes her victim's identity. Judging by her browser history, Yoo-jung watched this film at least once a day. If you recall how Yoo-jung wore Kay's clothes and took her ID card, the parallels between the film and her actions are obvious. But that doesn't mean that movies or any other media entertainment are responsible for people's actions. Of course, I also like dark content, you might have noticed that from my channel, but it's quite possible that Yoo-jung was simply inspired by the film Helpless, or fell in love with the concept it explores. If you look at her life before this incident, it becomes clear why the idea of becoming someone else could have been so tempting. After analyzing her messages and, in general, her social media, the police realized that Yoo-jung had no friends, no acquaintances, no job, no family, nothing except her grandfather. She was the grayest of all gray mice. During her school years, she seemed fairly normal, with at least some kind of social life, but something changed after that. By chance or misfortune, Yoo-jung began to lead a secluded, lonely, reclusive lifestyle, hardly communicating with anyone, either in real life or on the internet. Psychologists suggest that she wanted to escape this situation both physically and emotionally. And what could be better than transforming into someone else? Into someone who lives a full life, who has their own apartment, a job, speaks a foreign language, and has friends. Into someone like Kay. Psychologists say that Yoo-jung's motive was not just curiosity, but envy. And in her mind, since she was already invisible, disappearing and becoming someone else would be especially easy. During the investigation, authorities contacted each of the 50 tutors Yoo-jung had corresponded with. Each of them was a young woman around 20 years old. As it turned out, she asked each one whether they lived alone and if her daughter could come to their home for lessons. One girl, who was desperately in need of money, almost accepted Yoo-jung as a student, but in the end refused her, thinking her apartment was too small for lessons. Now she and all the other tutors live with this chilling thought. It could have been me. Equally frightening was Yoo-jung's complete lack of remorse. After she carried out her twisted fantasy in the surveillance camera footage taken before and immediately after the murder, she appears eerily calm and composed, moving with an almost determined stride. Honestly, it's hard to understand how Yoo-jung could walk out onto the street and look so composed after literally stabbing another person. Of course, after her arrest, she gave rehearsed apologies to the press, saying things like, "I'm sorry for Kay's family, and I guess I just wasn't myself," which were hardly sincere apologies. She left all the sincerity to her grandfather, who, unfortunately, became the target of media interviews. During one of them, he blamed himself for Yoo-jung's actions, saying it was his fault she turned out the way she did because he raised her wrong. He also said that he felt very sorry for Kay's family. By all accounts, the grandfather was a very kind person. He did everything he could to raise Yoo-jung on his own. His neighbors spoke only good things about him. And yet now he lives with a sense of guilt for his granddaughter's actions. Ahead of the trial, Yoo-jung took the PCLR test, which assesses subjects on their capacity for empathy, impulsiveness, and whether they lead a parasitic lifestyle. The test consists of 20 questions and is scored out of 40 points. In South Korea, anyone who scores more than 25 points is considered a true psychopath, completely devoid of remorse. Yoo-jung scored 28 points. During the trial, Yoo Jung asked for leniency, claiming that she was suffering from hallucinations at the time of the incident. The prosecutors were not swayed by yet another defense, pointing out that she had planned everything and tried to cover it up. Therefore, they demanded the death penalty. However, she managed to avoid this fate. On November 24th, 1923, Yoo Jung was sentenced to life imprisonment behind bars. And it's worth considering. If the taxi driver hadn't trusted his instincts and gone to the police, she might well have gotten away with all of this, at least for a while, enough time to prepare for another attack, which she almost certainly would have done. I think you've noticed that throughout this video, I've simply referred to him as the taxi driver. That's because he chose not to have his name mentioned in the media. He refused interviews and even awards, fearing that Yoo Jung might be released early and come after him, or that someone inspired by her might come after him. According to reports, Yoo Jung actually feels very comfortable in prison. She eats well, sleeps well, enjoys the isolation, and shows no signs of remorse. South Korean media constantly focus on Yoo Jung's appearance, specifically on the fact that no one could have suspected such a young and innocent-looking woman of committing such a heinous act. But as we've seen many times on this channel, appearances can be deceiving, and criminals come in all shapes and sizes. And I wouldn't say that Yoo Jung's appearance surprised me, but the thought itself did. The thought that in this world, wherever you are, you don't necessarily have to go looking for trouble. Trouble can find you on its own. We can live peacefully, do only the right things, and then suddenly meet our end at the hands of a stranger. One fine day, from someone we've never wronged, never even met, someone who might smile at you to your face and then just attack you. Yes, just like that. A big thank you to my sponsors on Boosty, who, by the way, are right now sitting and watching videos that aren't available on the channel. It's all thanks to them. And especially to Marco Vu, Marnelli, Marco, Toxville, Glencash, Flexbox, Phantom Folk, Alexander Ilian, and Koshi Dance. And of course, thank you all for watching.